Seoul was a city that rewarded appearances. Dress sharp, speak carefully, never let anyone see you sweat. The people at the top of the city had turned that into an art form, and nobody wore it better than Kang Si-woo, 29 years old, head of Kang Corporation, the kind of man who could silence a boardroom just by walking into it. His suits cost more than most people's monthly rent. His handshake closed deals that took other men years to build. Cold, precise, and completely unreadable. And completely embarrassingly, helplessly in love with his wife. He would never say that out loud. But every morning before he left for the office, he fixed her coffee exactly the way she liked it. 2 sugars, a little cream, heated to the temperature she told him once, and he never forgot. He set it on the counter without saying anything. Just left it there like it was nothing. Kia always smiled when she found it. Kia Davis Kang was not what Seoul expected. She was young, warm, and so genuinely friendly that it confused people who were used to performing friendliness for strategy. She laughed easily. She remembered everyone's names. She once spent an entire dinner asking Siwoo's most feared business rival about his rescue dog until the man forgot he had come to the dinner angry. Seoul's socialite circle had a name for her, the Decoration. They said it behind closed doors, in careful voices, with polite smiles. They assumed Siwoo had married her on impulse, some sweet girl he met abroad who got lucky. They tolerated her. A few of the more vicious ones had made a quiet sport of condescending to her face, while she smiled and offered them more tea. She never corrected them. She never flinched. She just smiled, nodded, and quietly noticed everything. On this particular Tuesday morning, Siwoo stood at the door in his coat, checking his phone. "Don't go out alone today," he said, not looking up. "Okay," Kia said. He looked up, studied her face. She looked back at him with the most honest expression he had ever seen in his life. He left for his board meeting. She waited exactly 7 minutes, picked up her grocery bag, and walked out the door. She loved this walk. 3 blocks from the penthouse there was an open market that no driver, no bodyguard, and no amount of wealth had ever convinced her to give up. The vegetables were better. The air smelled like sesame and fish and something frying somewhere nearby. And at the far end, under a faded yellow umbrella, was Grandma Sook, 71 years old, 4 feet 11, and the best persimmon seller in all of Seoul. "You came again," Grandma Sook said. "I always come," Kia said. She moved through the market slowly, unhurried, picked her vegetables carefully, stopped to feel the mangoes, tucked everything into her bag with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had chosen this life deliberately and loved every ordinary corner of it. She was on her way back when she noticed them. 3 men ahead. Positioned wrong, too still, too spread out, watching without looking like they were watching. She felt the shift in the air before she processed it consciously. She slowed her steps without stopping, 2 more behind her. She looked down at her grocery bag, mentally checked the eggs, bottom of the bag, wrapped, probably fine if she was careful. The mango was on top. That was useful, actually. She looked up at the 3 men ahead. "You want to do this here?" she asked. Quietly, almost gently. The man in front smiled. He had at least 4 inches and 100 pounds on her. He looked at his colleagues. They looked back. One of them almost laughed. They thought she was trembling. She was not trembling. She was counting angles. The first man reached for her arm. And that is where everything they assumed about Kang Si-woo's quiet wife came apart. If you thought you knew where this was going, you don't. Subscribe and turn on your notifications because this story is about to go places nobody saw coming. Stay with me. The man's hand never made it to her arm. Kia rotated into him before he finished the reach. Smooth, no hesitation, like a door swinging on a well-oiled hinge. Her elbow connected with his jaw at full force. The sound was not pleasant. He spun once, completely, like a man who had been notified by the universe that he had made a terrible life decision, and dropped. 1. Man 2 came from the left, swinging wide. She dropped below it, not a stumble, a choice. Came up inside his reach before he could recalibrate, drove the heel of her palm into his nose, and followed it immediately with her knee into his ribs. He folded in 2. She was already turning before he hit the ground. 2. Man 3 was the big one. She had clocked him first, broadest shoulders, heaviest step, positioned closest to the wall, which meant he was expecting to use it. He came from behind, arms wide, going for a bear hug that would have pinned anyone else completely. She dropped her weight straight down. He grabbed air. She was already behind him. Forearm across the throat, her body weight leveraging his own size against him. He was too heavy to throw, so she didn't throw him. She rode him down, controlled, methodical, and pressed until his legs gave. He went down slow and stayed down. 3. The grocery bag was still on her left forearm. She had not put it down once. Men 4 and 5 had watched the first 3 go down in approximately 90 seconds and were now having what appeared to be a rapid private reassessment of their life choices. To their credit, they still came. 4 rushed her straight on. 5 circled left. She reached into the grocery bag, pulled out the mango, and threw it directly at Man 4's face. It was a very good mango. Firm. Heavy. It caught him across the bridge of the nose, and he flinched. Just 1 second. Eyes squeezing shut by pure reflex. 1 second was enough. She closed the distance before his eyes reopened. 2 strikes in fast sequence. Throat, then temple, and he was done before he understood what the mango had to do with any of it. 4. Man 5 stopped. He looked at Man 1, still rotating slowly back to consciousness on the pavement. He looked at Man 2, folded neatly over his own ribs. He looked at Man 3, a very large person somehow arranged very flat on the ground. He looked at Man 4, who had a mango resting gently on his chest. He looked at Kia. She tilted her head. Waiting. He ran. Total time elapsed, 3 minutes, 50 seconds. Kia lowered her arm, let the grocery bag settle, and took a slow breath through her nose. She looked down at the 4 men on the ground with the mild expression of someone who had been mildly inconvenienced on an otherwise pleasant Tuesday. Then she checked the grocery bag. Vegetables, fine. Eggs, fine. 1 mango gone, which was annoying because it had been a good one. She had specifically pressed 3 before choosing that one. She sighed. A soft shuffle came from her left. Grandma Sook emerged from behind the persimmon stand, moving at the unhurried pace of a woman who had lived 71 years and was no longer surprised by very much. She looked at the 4 men on the ground. She looked at Kia. She looked at the men again. Persimmon, she said. Yes, please, Kia said. Grandma Sook selected the best one from the front of the display. She had been saving it since morning, though she could not have explained why, and held it out. Kia took it, dropped the payment into the old woman's hand, picked up her grocery bag, and walked home. Behind her, one of the men on the ground groaned and tried to sit up. Grandma Sook looked down at him. Don't, she said simply. He didn't. What nobody on that street knew. Not the men, now slowly returning to consciousness, not Grandma Sook enjoying the most entertaining Tuesday of her decade, was that the jacket of Man 3, the big one, had a micro camera sewn into the collar. Positioned perfectly, it had recorded everything. And somewhere across the city, in a clean, quiet office with no name on the door, a man named Wren sat in front of a monitor and watched the footage play out with calm, focused attention. When it finished, he watched it again. Then he leaned back in his chair and said nothing for a long time. The man standing behind him shifted nervously. Should we send more? Wren didn't answer immediately. He was watching the moment she dropped her weight to avoid the grab, the specific technique, the precise timing. He recognized it. No, he said. Then what do we do? Wren finally turned from the screen. His expression was unreadable. We changed the plan, he said. Kia got home 17 minutes before Siwoo. She put the groceries away in the exact order she always did. Vegetables first, eggs carefully on the second shelf, the remaining fruit in the bowl on the counter. She washed her hands, changed her top, and started cooking. By the time she heard Siwoo's key in the door, she had rice going, soup on low heat, and a second pot of water coming to a boil. The apartment smelled warm and settled, the way it always did on Tuesday evenings, and nothing about it suggested that 4 men were currently lying on a pavement 3 blocks away reconsidering everything. Siwoo came in looking the way he always looked after a long board meeting. Jacket still perfect, tie slightly loosened, the particular tension he carried behind his eyes that he thought nobody noticed. Kia noticed. She had noticed since the 3rd week of knowing him. He set his bag down, looked at the kitchen, looked at her. How was your day? Quiet, she said. He nodded, sat at the counter, and accepted the glass of water she slid across to him without being asked. They ate together the way they always did on Tuesdays. Unhurried, easy, the kind of comfortable that takes time to build, and most people never find. Siwoo complained mildly about the board meeting, something about the Mira Systems acquisition getting complicated. Legal was flagging things. The numbers on paper didn't match the numbers in reality, which in his experience meant someone was hiding something inside the structure. Kia listened. She asked questions in the gentle, interested way she always asked questions, the kind that sounded like wifely curiosity and were actually something else entirely. What kind of discrepancy? Shell accounts. 3 layers deep. Nothing illegal on the surface, but he paused, looked at her. Why are you interested in shell accounts? I'm interested in everything you say, she said simply. He looked at her for a moment. Then, because this was completely true and he had no argument against it, he kept talking. She filed everything he said into a part of her mind she kept very organized and very separate from the part that loved him. After dinner, Saiwu sat on the couch with Mochi, their Pomeranian, arranged on his lap like a small, furious cloud. Saiwu was reading documents. He was also, with his free hand and in complete denial about it, scratching Mochi behind the ears with the focused devotion of a man who would deny this under oath. Kia sat across from him, pretending to read and actually watching his face. She had found the name 3 weeks ago. Inside a subsidiary buried 4 layers into the Mira system's filing structure. She had been careful. She had said nothing. She had opened the laptop behind the rice cooker and started building a picture quietly, the way she had been trained to build pictures. Slowly from the edges inward, never touching the center until you understood the whole shape. The name in the Mira files was Director Wu. She knew that name. She knew it the way you know the name of someone who shaped the most hidden years of your life. And seeing it inside her husband's acquisition documents had sent a cold, specific feeling up her spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. This was not a coincidence. Someone had arranged this. She just didn't know yet if she had been the arrangement or the accident. At 11:15, Siwoo fell asleep on the couch mid-document, which he would deny in the morning with great conviction. Mochi migrated from his lap to his chest and stayed there like a small, self-appointed security system. Kia waited until his breathing was completely even. Then she went to the kitchen, moved the rice cooker, lifted the false bottom of the drawer behind it, and took out the laptop. She opened the Mira Systems file she had been building for 3 weeks, added what Siwoo had told her at dinner, the shell accounts, the 3-layer structure, the discrepancy legal had flagged. She cross-referenced it against the 2 names she had already identified from the attack. Ran the connection forward. It took her 40 minutes to find the internal transfer route. It took her another 20 to trace it back to its origin point. When she found it, she sat back and looked at the ceiling for a long moment. Then she looked at the doorway to the living room where Si-Woo was still asleep, one hand on Mochi, completely unaware that the acquisition he was fighting to close was built on a foundation that had been rotten for years, and that the rot had a name she recognized from a life she had walked away from. She closed the laptop, put it back behind the rice cooker, stood in the quiet kitchen for a moment. Then she walked to the living room, gently lifted Si-Woo's legs, sat down, put his feet in her lap, and stayed there in the dark thinking about how much she loved this life and how hard she was going to fight to keep it exactly as it was. Mochi opened one eye, looked at her, and closed it again. I know, she whispered. Kang Corporation's security system ran an automatic overnight sweep of all flagged incidents within a 3-block radius of any registered family address. Cho Daehan had built that system himself, 15 years of experience. He was proud of it. He was less proud of it at 7:42 in the morning when it dropped a flagged clip directly into his inbox. He opened it expecting a street altercation. A theft, maybe. Something routine he could log and close before his first coffee. He watched the clip once. He watched it again. He picked up his phone, called Si-Woo, and said 4 words. You need to see this. Si-Woo watched it alone in his office with the door closed. He watched Kia rotate into the first man before the grab landed. He watched her put down man 2 with 2 strikes. He watched her ride man 3, a person who outweighed her by at least 100 pounds, down to the ground like it was a technique she had done 1,000 times, because she had done it 1,000 times. He rewound it, watched the man go, rewound again. His assistant Park came in with his morning schedule, looked at the screen, looked at Siwoo's face, and walked back out quietly. Sent a text to Jisoo that said only, come to the office. Siwoo watched the clip 4 more times. By the last viewing, he was leaning forward with his elbows on the desk like a man watching match footage. At one point, he paused on the frame where Kia checked her grocery bag after it was over, and his expression did something complicated, that landed somewhere between awe and complete personal crisis. He straightened his tie, stood up, sat back down. He called Cho Daehan. How long have you had this? Since 7:30. Why didn't you call me at 7:30? I needed 11 minutes, Daehan said. For what? Long pause. To process, sir. Siwoo came home at 4 in the afternoon, which had never happened on a Tuesday in the 3 years Kia had known him. She was in the kitchen when she heard his key. She looked at the clock, looked at the door, said nothing. He came in, set his bag down, and sat at the counter. She slid him water without being asked. He didn't drink it. He just looked at her with the specific expression of a man whose entire understanding of his own life had been quietly rearranged without his permission. Kia leaned against the counter, waited. How was the board meeting, she asked. Kia? Yes? Who are you? Not a question. A full stop. She looked at him for a moment, then she poured herself tea, sat down across from him, and told him the broad version. Not everything. The recruitment at 16, the training, the years she didn't talk about, the decision to walk away, the part where she moved to Seoul and met a cold, serious man at a jazz bar and argued about Coltrane for 40 minutes. Siwoo listened without moving. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. The grocery bag, he said finally. What about it? You never put it down. The eggs were in there. He stared at her. 5 men, he said. 4. The 5th one ran. That is not. He stopped, gripped the edge of the table. Kia, are you telling me that this whole time... I make your coffee every morning, she said. I love this apartment. I love mochi. I love our Tuesday dinners. None of that is different. You took down 4 men on the way home from the market, and I still got the persimmons. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the ceiling. A vein in his jaw moved. From the living room, Mochi trotted in, looked at Siwoo's face, looked at Kia, and sat down next to Siwoo in a show of either solidarity or survival instinct. Siwoo looked down at him. You knew? He said. Mochi said nothing. You absolutely knew. That evening, Jisoo arrived at the apartment uninvited, which was her only way of arriving anywhere. She walked in, looked at Siwoo sitting on the couch with the expression of a man who had been gently struck by a vehicle, then looked at Kia in the kitchen. Then she grabbed Kia's face in both hands. I knew, she said. I knew there was something about you. From the very first dinner, you were too calm. Nobody is that calm. You are everything. She turned to Siwoo. You finally did something right. Siwoo looked genuinely wounded. I do things right constantly, he said. Nobody in the room agreed with him. Siwoo did not sleep well. He lay on his back in the dark, staring at the ceiling, while Kia slept beside him with the complete, unbothered stillness of someone whose conscience was entirely clear. Mochi was between them. At some point, Siwoo looked at the dog, and the dog looked back at him, and they shared a moment of mutual understanding that neither of them would ever speak about. At 2 in the morning, Siwoo got up, went to the kitchen, and made himself tea he didn't drink. He stood at the counter, thinking about the footage. Then he thought about the fact that whoever sent 5 men to his wife's Tuesday market, Run had known exactly which market, exactly what time, and exactly which route she took home. He put the tea down. That was not a guess. That was information. Specific, current, inside information that could only have come from someone close enough to know Kia's weekly routine. Someone inside his circle. He was still standing there at 3:15 when Kia appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, looked at him, looked at the untouched tea, and said nothing for a moment. You figured out there's a mole, she said. He turned slowly. You already knew. He stared at her. And you didn't tell me? I was still confirming. She moved to the counter, opened the drawer, moved the rice cooker, and lifted the false bottom. Siwoo watched this with the expression of a man learning that his kitchen had a secret compartment, which it did, which he had not known about, in his own home. She put the laptop on the counter and opened it. The file she had built was 47 pages. Siwoo stood beside her and read in silence, cross-references, transfer routes, shell company structures, time-stamped movement logs she had assembled from public records, security footage, and sources she did not explain and he did not ask about yet. At page 12, he pulled up a chair. At page 29, he stopped and pointed at a name. That's my head of logistics, he said. Keep reading, she said. At page 34, he stopped again. This name he looked at longer. He has been with Kang Corporation for 9 years, he said quietly, 8 of which he has been routing information to a shell entity connected to Pale Room operations, Kia said. The payments are small enough to avoid automatic flags, consistent enough to be a salary. Siwoo sat back. The particular stillness that came over him was not anger exactly. It was colder than anger. It was the expression of a man recalibrating every conversation, every meeting, and every decision made in the presence of someone he had trusted without question for nearly a decade. Kia watched his face and said nothing. She knew what that recalibration felt like. "How do we confirm it?" he said. Not a question. A next step. "Already done," she said. 4 days ago, I told each of the 3 people on my shortlist something different. Small details about your schedule. Different versions. Slightly wrong in specific ways. And the version I gave Lee Junso reached Pale Room's logistics coordinator within 6 hours. Silence. 6 hours, Siwoo repeated. He's efficient, Kia said. Siwoo handled it the next morning with the cold precision that had built Kang Corporation from a mid-sized firm into an empire. He called Lee Junseo into his office at 9. Cho Dae-han was already inside when Junseo arrived. The door closed. Kia was at home eating breakfast. Siwoo texted her at 9:14. Done. She texted back a single persimmon emoji. He stared at it for a moment, alone in his office, and felt something shift in his chest that he was not going to examine in a professional setting. What neither of them had accounted for was what happened next. By removing Lee Jun-seo, they had sent a signal to the Pale Room. Not a loud one. But Ren was not a man who missed quiet signals. Within 24 hours, the acquisition strategy shifted. The Pale Room stopped trying to gather information from inside Kang Corporation. They didn't need to anymore. They had enough. And Junso's removal told them that Kia was not just a fighter, she was a thinker. She was working the problem inside, which meant the problem had changed shape. Ren made 2 calls. The first was to his financial team. Pull the Mira Systems documents. Bury the Director Wu connection deeper. Buy another 30 days. The second call was to a private number he had not dialed in over a year. It rang 4 times. "I wondered when you'd call," said the voice on the other end. "She's good," Ren said. "Better than when she left." "She was always going to be," said Director Wu. "She found the name in the Mira files." Long pause. "How long ago?" 3 weeks. Another pause. "Longer." "Then she already knows more than you think," Director Wu said. "She always did." Ren was quiet for a moment, and outside his window, Seoul moved in its usual relentless way, indifferent and bright. "Is she a problem?" he asked. Director Wu's answer came without hesitation. She was never supposed to be anything else. The message arrived on Kia's personal phone at 6 in the morning. Not Siwoo's monitored lines, not the apartment intercom. Her personal number, the one she had never given to anyone in Seoul except Nadia back in New Orleans. 3 words. "We should talk. No name, no number." But she knew exactly who it was. The same way you know a voice you haven't heard in years the moment it reaches you. Not because it's loud, but because it's specific. Built from the same place yours was. She deleted the message, put the phone face down, and finished her coffee. She did not tell Siwoo. She spent 2 days thinking about it. Ren had not sent an attack. He had not sent a threat. He had sent 3 words on a channel that told her he knew exactly who she was and exactly how to reach her, which was its own kind of message. On the 3rd day, she texted back 1 word. Where? She told Siwoo she was going to visit Grandma Sook. This was partially true. She did stop at the persimmon stand. Grandma Sook took 1 look at her face and held out a persimmon without being asked. "Trouble?" the old woman said. "Manageable," Kia said. Grandma Sook nodded slowly, like this was a completely normal Tuesday conversation. Ren was waiting at a small tea house 4 blocks from the market. Sitting with his back to the wall, both exits visible, tea already poured. Old habits. Kia sat across from him. He looked the same. Older around the eyes. The kind of tired that comes not from not sleeping, but from sleeping fine and doing difficult things anyway. "You look well," he said. "You sent 5 men to my grocery run," she said. "That was a miscalculation," he said. "I needed to see what you still had." "You could have just asked." "Would you have answered?" She didn't respond. He had his answer. He had his forward. "Kia. Director Wu is not who you think he is. The program, what he built it for, what he's been using it for, it goes further back than Mira Systems. Your husband's acquisition is one piece. There are 14 other companies in the same structure across 6 countries." She kept her face still. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Wu is moving the timeline up. He planned to let the acquisition collapse quietly. Now that you're involved, he wants it done faster, and he doesn't care how." Ren paused. That means Saiwu is no longer just a business obstacle. The air in the room changed. Say that clearly, Kia said. He's a liability Wu wants removed. She walked home faster than she had walked anywhere in 2 years. Siwoo was in his study when she got back. She stood in the doorway and looked at him, head down, working, completely unaware that somewhere across the city, a man who had trained alongside her had just told her that her husband's life was on a shortening clock. She had 36 hours, maybe less. She needed Siwoo to move without telling him everything, without scaring him, without him doing something protective and counterproductive like calling the police or hiring 40 additional security personnel who would slow everything down. She walked into the study. Siwoo, he looked up. I need you to cancel tomorrow's board meeting and work from home. He studied her face. In 3 years of marriage, he had learned to read the specific quality of her stillness, the difference between calm and controlled. This was controlled. Kia, what happened? I'll explain everything tonight. Right now, I need you to trust me. Long pause. He picked up his phone and canceled the meeting. No argument, no negotiation, just trust, clean and immediate, handed over without conditions. She stood there for 1 extra second taking that in. Then her phone buzzed. Nadia. Voice message. Girl, I had a dream you were in some kind of danger in Korea. You good? Also, my cousin wants to visit. He's only been arrested twice. It was completely misunderstood. Kia put the phone in her pocket. Not right now, Nadia. Siwoo listened without interrupting. That alone told Kia how serious he understood it to be. This was a man who interrupted board members, lawyers, and occasionally his own thoughts. Tonight, he sat at the kitchen counter and listened to everything, the program, the recruitment at 16, the operations she had run before she was 21, Director Wu, Ren, the tea house conversation, the timeline. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. 14 companies, he said. Across 6 countries. Mira Systems is the newest. It's also the most exposed because you tried to acquire it legitimately, which opened the books. So I accidentally pulled a thread that unravels his entire financial structure. Yes, and his solution is to remove me. Yes. Siwoo nodded slowly. Looked at his hands. Looked at her. I have one question, he said. Okay. The jazz bar the night we met, was that? No, she said immediately. That was just a jazz bar. He looked at her carefully. Siwoo, I argued with you about Coltrane for 40 minutes. No one does that professionally. Something in his jaw relaxed slightly. They worked through the night. Kia laid out everything she had built over 3 weeks. Siwoo matched it against his acquisition documents, his legal team's flags, the shell account structures. Together they moved faster than either would have alone. Her intelligence framework, his financial architecture knowledge, filling each other's gaps with the specific efficiency of 2 people who had independently been circling the same problem from opposite sides. By 2 a.m, they had the full picture. Director Wu had built a weapons and data trafficking network using legitimate corporations as financial cover. Mira Systems was the last piece he needed to complete a payment corridor that would make the entire structure untraceable. Saiwoo's acquisition had threatened to expose it, and Kia's involvement had accelerated Wu's decision to stop being patient. He'll move in the next 24 hours, Kia said. How? Not directly. Wu never moves directly. He'll use someone already inside your world. She paused. Someone we haven't identified yet. Siwoo went still. There's a second mole, he said. I think so. Higher up than Junseo. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked at Seoul below them, bright and indifferent as always. My board meeting tomorrow, he said slowly. The one I canceled. What about it? 3 board members pushed hard for that meeting, specifically wanted it in person, specifically at the Kang Tower location rather than the secondary office. He turned. I thought it was routine. Kia was already pulling up the laptop. It took her 40 minutes to find it. Not a board member. The building's contracted security firm brought in 8 months ago on a recommendation from a board member named Choi Sung-min. The firm had full access to Kang Tower's internal layout, elevator controls, private meeting room feeds, entry points. She turned the laptop towards Siwoo. He looked at the screen, looked at the name of the firm, looked at the name Choi Sung-min. Sung-min has been on my board for 6 years, he said quietly, and has been on Wu's payroll for 4, Kia said. The vein in Siwoo's jaw moved. She was learning that was his version of losing his mind. So the board meeting, he said, was never a board meeting, she said. He absorbed this. Then he straightened, rolled up his sleeves, and said in a completely level voice, "What do we do? Not what do you do? Not I'll call security. We." Kia looked at him for a moment. This man who had canceled a meeting on her word alone, who had sat and listened and matched her step for step through the darkest part of what she had never fully shown him. "We set a trap," she said. "Using what?" She almost smiled. "The board meeting." Across the city, Ren sat in his car outside Director Wu's building and stared at his phone. Wu had just moved the operation to tomorrow morning. No more patience, no more layers. Ren sat there for a long time. Then he typed a single message to a number he had only used once before. "Tomorrow, Kang Tower. Be ready." He sent it. To Kia. They were ready by 5 in the morning. Siwoo reinstated the board meeting at 7. Same time, same location, same agenda. Choi Sung-min confirmed attendance within 4 minutes, which told them everything they needed to know about how closely he had been watching for it. Kia read the confirmation over Siwoo's shoulder. 4 minutes, Siwoo said. "He's eager," she said. "I've known this man for 6 years." "I know." He closed the laptop, said nothing for a moment. Then he stood, straightened his shirt, and became the version of himself that closed billion-dollar deals in silence. Kia watched the shift happen. It never got less impressive. The plan was clean. Siwoo would run the board meeting normally. Cho Dae-han, who had recovered from his identity crisis enough to be functional, though he was still unusually quiet, would manage building security with a skeleton team Kia had personally vetted the night before. Contracted security firm's access had been quietly revoked at 4 in the morning. They didn't know yet. Kia would not be in the meeting. She would be in the building's secondary monitoring room on the 14th floor, a room that appeared on no current building schematic because Siwoo had quietly removed it from all documents 3 years ago for reasons he described only as general principle. Kia had looked at him when he told her that. "General principle," she repeated. "I run a corporation with enemies," he said simply. "I like rooms people don't know about." She had married the right man. Choi Sung-min arrived at 8:45 with the relaxed confidence of someone who believed he was the smartest person in the building. He was not the smartest person in the building. He wasn't even the smartest person on his floor. The meeting started. Siwoo ran it with his usual precision. Cold, focused, completely unreadable. Sung-min made 2 calls from the building's restroom between agenda items. Kia watched both calls on the monitoring feed, tracked the numbers, cross-referenced them in under 90 seconds. Both numbers traced back to the contracted security firm. She texted Dae-han, "Second exit. 2 men outside. Handle it." Dae-han responded, "Already done." She stared at that for a second. Maybe his confidence was recovering. At 9:17, the contracted firm's team attempted to reactivate their building access from a panel in the parking structure. Nothing happened. They tried again. Still nothing. The team leader made a call. The call went to Sung-min's phone inside the boardroom. Siwoo watched Sung-min look at his screen, watched his expression shift by 2 degrees, not enough for anyone else in the room to catch. Siwoo caught it. He kept talking without pausing. At 9:23, Kia sent him a single text. "Now." Siwoo stopped mid-sentence, set down his pen, and looked directly at Choi Sung-min with the specific quality of attention that had made grown men renegotiate entire contracts just to get out of the room. "Sung-min," he said quietly, "would you like to tell me about your relationship with a Director Wu?" The boardroom went completely still. Sung-min's face did 4 things in 2 seconds. Siwoo watched all 4 with calm patience. "I don't know what." "Your firm's access was revoked at 4 this morning," Siwoo said. "The 2 men at the second exit are currently having a conversation with my security team, and my wife has been watching your calls from the 14th floor for the last 40 minutes. Sung-min looked at the other board members. Nobody looked back. "It's over," Siwoo said simply. "The only question is how you'd like the next part to go." Director Wu was arrested at his office at 10 o'clock by authorities who had received a remarkably thorough anonymous file at 9:58, 47 pages, fully cross-referenced, covering 8 years of financial crime across 6 countries. Nobody could identify who had sent it. Ren was gone before anyone thought to look for him. No trace, no forwarding address, no record of where he went. Just an empty office and a cold cup of tea. He left one thing behind. A persimmon sitting on the desk. Kia saw the photograph Dae-han sent her and sat with it for a moment. Then she smiled, just slightly. Siwoo found her on the 14th floor, still at the monitors, jacket off, completely calm. He stood in the doorway. "It's done," he said. "I know. I watched." He crossed the room, and without any of his usual composure or careful distance, he pulled her into him and held on with both arms and said nothing for a long time. She let him. Siwoo. "Don't talk," he said into her hair. "I'm having a moment." She laughed, quietly, against his shoulder. From her pocket, her phone buzzed. Nadia, voice message. "Kia, I just had another dream. Girl, you need to call me." Kia reached into her pocket and turned the phone face down without breaking the hug. "Not right now, Nadia." 3 weeks later, Seoul had moved on, the way Seoul always did. The Pale Room's financial structure collapsed within days of Director Wu's arrest. 14 companies across 6 countries frozen. 8 years of careful architecture dismantled by a 47-page file that arrived anonymously and was never traced back to anyone. Mira Systems was quietly withdrawn from acquisition. Siwoo's legal team handled it in 48 hours. Clean, precise. No public statement. Life returned to normal, or something better than normal. Siwoo had changed in small ways that he would never acknowledge out loud. He no longer walked ahead of Kia in public. He had tried for exactly 3 days before she said Siwoo in the specific tone that required no follow-up words, and he stopped immediately. He had, however, developed a new habit of watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Not with worry. With something that sat closer to wonder. The expression of a man who had thought he understood the full shape of something he loved and had discovered it was larger than he knew. Kia noticed. She always noticed. She just let him look. On a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the Kang Tower operation, Kia picked up her grocery bag and walked to the market. Siwoo appeared beside her at the door. She looked at him. He was in a full coat, keys in hand, expression completely neutral. "I'm coming," he said. "To the market." "Yes. Siwoo, you have a 9 o'clock. I moved it." She looked at him for a long moment. "You moved a 9 o'clock board meeting," she said, "to buy vegetables." "I moved it to accompany my wife," he said with great dignity. "The vegetables are incidental." She stared at him. He stared back. Neither of them moved. Then she turned and walked out the door. He followed. Mochi attempted to follow and was gently redirected by the door closing. They walked 3 blocks through Tuesday morning Seoul side by side, not saying very much, the way people walk when the silence between them is entirely comfortable. Grandma Suk saw them coming from half a block away. She looked at Siwoo, looked at Kia, looked at Siwoo again with the long evaluating gaze of a woman who had seen everything and was not easily impressed. Then she selected 2 persimmons from the very front of the display, the best ones, the ones she kept for specific people, and held them out. Siwoo looked at the persimmon, looked at Grandma Suk. "She comes every Tuesday," Grandma Suk said simply. "Good girl." "I know," Siwoo said. "You know now," Grandma Suk said. Kia pressed her lips together very hard. Siwoo had the grace to accept this without argument. On the walk home, Kia's phone buzzed. Nadia. Voice message, as always. She played it on speaker because at this point, Siwoo had heard enough of them to be invested. "Kia Davis Kang, you have not called me in 3 weeks. I saw on the news something about a Korean billionaire and some kind of corporate crime situation, and your name was not mentioned. But I know you, girl. I know you. I know you. Call me. Also, my cousin still wants to visit. He's only been arrested twice. It was genuinely misunderstood both times. He just has an unfortunate face." Siwoo listened to the entire thing. "The cousin," he said carefully, "has been arrested twice." "Allegedly," Kia said. "That is not." "He has a very honest face, actually," Kia said. "People misread it." Siwoo looked at her. She looked back at him with the most genuine expression he had ever seen in his life. He thought about arguing. Then he thought about the fact that this woman had dismantled a 9-year criminal network from a kitchen drawer while making him soup, and decided that Nadia's cousin was genuinely the smallest problem he currently had. "Fine," he said. Kia smiled. It was the same smile she had given him at the jazz bar the night they argued about Coltrane, the one that had started all of this. He had never stood a chance. He was aware of this now. He was completely fine with it. 3 blocks away, in her penthouse kitchen, Mochi sat at the door waiting for them to come back. Patient. Unbothered. He had always known exactly who she was, from the very beginning.